Most people assume long life comes from doing the right things, eating well, staying active, and going for regular checkups. But after 13 years working in medicine, I can tell you something most people don't realize. The people who live the longest are not always the ones doing everything perfectly. And the people who decline early are not always the ones doing things wrong. So what is actually separating them? Because once you understand this, you'll realize something important. Your body may already be moving toward a path you don't even feel yet. And what I'm about to explain is happening silently, inside almost everyone watching this. And that's exactly why this is so dangerous. Because you don't feel it happening. There is no alarm, no sudden warning, no obvious sign that something is going wrong. But what's happening underneath the surface is far more important than what you feel on the surface of your body while everything feels completely normal. Now, I want to be very clear from the beginning. This is not about luck. This is not about genetics. And it's definitely not about expensive treatments or complicated medical breakthroughs. It's something much simpler, but also much more ignored. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Hello, my friend. My name is Dr. Miles, and I've spent 13 years working in medicine, including emergency care. Over that time, I've seen thousands of patients, and something very consistent has stood out. There is a clear pattern between the people who live into their late 80s and 90s in good health and those who don't. And it has very little to do with what most people assume. In fact, it often has nothing to do with what they think is important at all. When people think about living longer, they usually focus on the obvious things. Things like avoiding sugar, taking supplements, doing occasional exercise, going for medical checkups. And don't get me wrong, those things can matter, but they are not what separates long-living people from everyone else. Because I've seen patients who did all of those things and still developed serious disease early. And I've also seen people who didn't obsess over any of it, yet lived long, strong lives well into old age. So what's the difference? That's what we need to understand. The biggest misunderstanding about aging is this. People think health changes suddenly, but in reality, it changes silently. Long before disease shows up, long before symptoms appear, long before a diagnosis is made, the body is already changing in the background. Slowly, quietly, consistently. And the people who live long are not necessarily the ones who avoid all risk. They are the ones whose bodies handle that silent change better for longer. And that difference usually comes down to one thing: metabolic stability. Let me explain what I mean. Every time you eat, your body has to manage energy. That energy mainly comes from glucose in your blood. To control that glucose, your body uses a hormone called insulin. Insulin's job is simple. It helps move glucose from your blood into your cells, so your body can use it for energy. Now here's where things start to matter. When your system is working well, this process is smooth. Eat glucose rises, insulin responds, balance restored. But over time, due to lifestyle, food patterns, inactivity, and constant energy overload, that system becomes less efficient. Your cells stop responding properly to insulin. This is what we call insulin resistance. And here's the important part. It doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly over years. And this is where most people get misled. Because during this silent phase, everything still looks normal. Your blood tests might look fine. You might feel fine. You might even think you're healthy. But underneath that surface, your body is working harder just to maintain balance. More insulin is needed. More stress is placed on your system. More internal pressure builds quietly over time. And this is where the separation begins. Not between sick and healthy people, but between those whose bodies can adapt and those that slowly lose that flexibility. This is the hidden factor behind long life. When I studied patients who lived to an older age in relatively good health, I noticed something important. It wasn't that they avoided all unhealthy behaviors. It wasn't that they lived perfect lifestyles. It was that their bodies remained resilient. They could handle food, stress, and lifestyle variation without breaking down quickly. Their metabolic system stayed flexible. And that flexibility is what protects the body over decades. Because aging is not just time passing. Aging is the accumulation of stress the body can no longer compensate for. Why modern life makes this worse. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Our environment has changed faster than our biology. For almost all of human history, people moved regularly, ate natural food, and experienced long periods without constant eating. But in modern life, everything has changed. We sit more. We eat more frequently. We consume more processed food. We move less between meals. And the body is constantly being asked to store energy rather than use it. Over time, this pushes the system toward imbalance. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually. And that gradual shift is what leads to long-term decline. This is why two people age completely differently. You've probably seen this. Two people the same age. One looks strong, sharp, energetic. The other looks tired, slower, dealing with multiple health issues. And people assume it's genetics. But genetics is only a small part of the story. The bigger difference is how long their internal systems stayed stable before breakdown began. Because once that internal balance starts to fail, everything else follows. Energy drops, recovery slows, inflammation increases, organs are placed under more strain, and over time, the gap between healthy aging and early decline becomes visible. The most dangerous part is that it feels normal. One of the reasons this is so important is because the early stages don't feel like illness. They feel like, I'm just getting older. I'm a bit more tired these days. I recover slower than I used to. So people accept it. They normalize it. But what's really happening is not just aging. It's a loss of metabolic flexibility. And that is something that accelerates over time if nothing changes. In emergency medicine, I see the end result of this process. Heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, metabolic complications. And in many cases, these conditions didn't appear suddenly. They were building silently for years, sometimes decades. That's what makes this so frustrating from a medical perspective. Because by the time symptoms appear, the underlying process has already been active for a long time. So what actually separates long-lived people? It's not perfect. It's not an extreme restriction. It's not avoiding every risk factor. It is something much more fundamental. Their bodies maintain balance longer under modern stress. That means stable energy regulation, better movement habits, less metabolic overload, consistent daily activity. Not perfection, but stability. What you can actually take from this, if there is one key takeaway, it is this. Your health in 10, 20, or 30 years is not decided by one moment. It is decided by repeated patterns. What you eat, how often you move, how your body handles energy day after day. Small decisions accumulate silently, and so do small imbalances. The goal is not perfection. The goal is reducing long-term strain on your system. If you want to live longer, this is what you need to understand. Not fear. Don't panic, but awareness. Because once you understand what actually drives long-term health, you stop focusing on short-term fixes. And you start focusing on what your body is doing every single day in the background. That is what truly separates people who live long, healthy lives from those who don't. And the earlier you understand that, the more control you actually have over your future. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel because I'll be breaking down more real medical insights like this that most people never hear in a regular doctor's visit. This is Dr. Miles. And if this helped you understand your health a little better, it could genuinely help someone you care about too. So don't forget to share it. See you in the next one.